The weather's extremely pretty today, so I thought we could talk about something equally as beautiful. So we're gonna talk about pop music. Now, first of all, I have to say that I find the concept of pop music actually quite interesting and quite beautiful. So if we go by the definition of pop music being popular music, music that is widely recognized and widely consumed, it's really the expression of the collective average of what human beings perceive to be good music. Now, of course, considering the current state of pop music, or the current state of the music industry, take that as you will, but regardless of what you think about the current condition of the music industry or the pop music industry, it's still a beautiful idea that we all collectively perceive and agree certain music to be worthwhile listening to. While that's really beautiful, I don't think we're actually executing on that vision. And in the second part of this video, I'm actually going to explain why I think that is. But regardless, now that that's out of the way, let's try and define it. So in the most basic form, pop music is music that is popular. And if you manage to make enough sales, if you manage to reach a large enough audience, then that is pop music. Congratulations, you've done it. You are officially popular. So in a sense, no matter how weird or different your music is, if it is widely popular, in that sense, it is pop music. Then you have the idea that pop music can be defined by the design of it. So the harmonies that are used, the melodies that are used, the rhythms that are used. And while you certainly have certain chord progressions and certain harmonies and melodies and rhythms that are cycled or used in pop music and often sort of define a large chunk of it, I don't find that to be the most consistent parameter for defining when a song becomes popular. Certainly, the majority of the material on the chart is quite similar. Every now and then you have the odd song or an odd album that makes it on the chart and essentially becomes popular. Which brings us to the third point, which is that pop music is really all about accessibility. People very commonly talk about simplicity, that your song needs to be simple in order to be pop music. That's really not what I've found. On the charts, constantly, you have music that is actually quite complex. So while it's certainly true that simplicity makes it easier for people to process the auditory information that they're receiving, it doesn't guarantee success, it doesn't guarantee popularity, because we also need to be stimulated. In order for something to be interesting, it does need to have at least a certain amount of complexity, or a certain type of complexity, that we're going to find the song interesting. So this idea that pop music needs to be about 4 chords and a 4/4 drum beat and a simple melody, it's simply not true. And in fact, if you look at the numbers of the amount of music that is like that and doesn't rise to the top, you would see that the majority of that type of music never really sees the light of day, never sees any success at all. So to me, it's pretty clear that complex music can be successful and simple music can be successful. So what is it really about? So I think a piece of music has the potential of becoming popular if the listener has access to the core of what the song is about. And there are plenty of things that can get in the way of a listener enjoying a piece of music. So what does accessibility actually consist of? I see accessibility consisting of a bunch of different individual elements all across the board of the process of writing music. So whether it's the composition or the songwriting or the arrangement or the instrumentation, the music production, the recording, the mixing, in each of those steps there's an opportunity to make the music more easily approachable and more easily understandable. And the better you are at each of those steps, the more you can ensure that the music stays clean, that it stays as lean as possible. So from the perspective of a composer or a songwriter, there are many things you can do from a music theory standpoint that allow you to keep the composition as lean as possible, as efficient as possible. So in short, you're really trying to get rid of excess fat, essentially, musical fat. And the same is true with all of the steps in the process of creating a piece of music. In terms of your arrangement, you can do that. In terms of your music production, in terms of your mixing, there are steps embedded in all of these where you can make sure that there's nothing excess that gets in the way of what the song is actually trying to tell. So only once you get rid of all the unnecessary excess stuff, then you'll have the opportunity to emphasize and accentuate what's actually there. And that is really the key to accessibility, making everything as refined as possible. And ultimately, that is what pop music is about, getting to the core of the essence and getting rid of any excess fat. Now, is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? Well, it depends on what you're trying to achieve. In some genres or in some styles of music, you want to have a lot of material. It's not meant to be easy necessarily. It's not meant to be easily digestible. And in pop music, it's really about how can I make every single small bit as meaningful as possible, as easily accessible as possible, and effective as possible, so that a potential listener, a potential consumer can get into the experience and get to the end of it too. And oftentimes songs fail being popular because there's too much to process. It's really not necessarily about the music being good or bad. The information isn't easily accessible by the listener. It needs several passes, or it needs some background information. And as someone who really loves to optimize a lot of things, I think that's sort of what makes me so fascinated about pop music, that it's really all about the bare essence of what the music is about. And you optimize until there's nothing left except the most intense, accessible, effective musical experience. Do I think all music should be like that? Absolutely not. Do I think it's the best way of making music? No. But do I think it's fun and interesting? Yes. And I think it's an extremely interesting way of writing music if you use the definition that I just spoke of. So that's what I think pop music is about, or should be about. It's certainly the most fascinating and interesting aspect of it that I personally enjoy. Now, in the next part, we're gonna try and figure out the current state of pop music and how we could possibly change it if we wanted to. Finished.